Taiwan, I'm Tiffany Wong with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. A Chinese influencer who has been ordered to leave Taiwan before midnight on Wednesday is protesting the decision in front of the Interior Ministry, where she's been greeted by around 100 counter-protesters, telling her to go home. The Chinese influencer known as Yaya had her marriage-based Taiwanese residency permit revoked 2 weeks ago after posting videos online that immigration officials said called for unification with China by force. She took the case to an administrative high court, but the court ruled that her comments indeed threatened Taiwan's national security and social stability. Today, just hours before she is set to leave, Yaya and her Taiwanese husband spoke out against the decision. Taiwan's Interior Minister also responded.
大家也知道，我即将被驱离台湾，但是我愿意站出来，邀请大家跟我公开辩论。对，总之我是非常不希望发生战争，我主张的是和平统一。
我真的衷心要求内政部暂停对我太太雅雅的驱离处分。 你一定要留给我们家庭，不能直接的这样子破裂。
纵观这几天的发展，我觉得雅雅这位女士呢，并不是一个普通妈妈。大家可以看到，从法律战、舆论战跟心理战，她这个呢可以说是三战齐发，不管是行政单位。 或是我们的司法单位都已经做出最后的一个裁示，希望雅雅能够按照我们原来的行政处分来做处理。
Yaya will not be able to reapply for a residency permit for another 5 years. Taiwan's Coast Guard is having to deal with a large number of Chinese vessels that are repeatedly trespassing in waters around the country. The boats range from small fishing vessels to larger oil barges, and there are no signs the intrusions are slowing down. John Van Trieste reports.
Off Taiwan's Penghu Islands, a Chinese fishing boat rocks through choppy waves, its crew hunting for squid. It doesn't have permission to be here, and some local fishermen will later claim its crew is aggressive, stealing the catch and even the fishing gear from other boats it comes across. By the time the Coast Guard arrives, though, this tiny vessel has disappeared out to sea.
抵达通报海域后，仅发现本国籍船只，经询问现场作业渔船均回复未发现陆籍小型快艇。本队将持续针对可疑快艇深入追查。
But this wasn't the only Chinese trespasser in Taiwan's waters in recent weeks. Taiwanese fishing crews sighted 2 other Chinese boats elsewhere off the same island chain Sunday. The Coast Guard is bringing in bigger patrol ships to meet this challenge. Boats like these may not just come to fish. Some military analysts see them as a test, probing Taiwan's resolve and ability to defend its own waters.
It's a so-called Chinese type, a new type of hybrid warfare, which conducted by the Beijing. Actually, not only the so-called gray zone, and even it's involved about the maritime resources. For example, China sent their large fishing vessel even to the South Pacific, close to the Argentina.
And while sometimes only 1 or 2 boats may be involved, there are also cases of more sophisticated intrusions elsewhere. In February, a team of 6 motherships released 29 smaller fishing boats into waters Taiwan has designated as a marine national park, a place where no fishing is allowed. The Coast Guard reports that often these boats fly no flag and have no name or home port painted on the side. It's also common practice to turn off signaling that would let the Coast Guard know they're there.
12海里内，巡防艇的雷达一定会侦测得到，侦测到目标是不是大陆渔船，我们要用肉眼去判别。大陆渔船会在船旁边加装铁棍，阻挡我们的船登检。
Not all Chinese boats are getting away, though. On Sunday, the Coast Guard seized this Chinese oil barge, which it suspects was helping other Chinese boats refuel off Taiwan's northwest coast. The 6 crew members had no ID. It expects to sort out punishments in the next 3 months.
前往永安外海西北20海里处查处可疑目标时，发现一艘无船名大陆船舶，那 本队同仁立即将其带返台北港查处。
Chinese social media has taken an interest in these incidents, but the Coast Guard says reports it's abused Chinese crews are untrue. It says it will continue to uphold Taiwan's sovereignty in its waters. But the recent wave of unidentified Chinese boats means it has a lot of work to do. Alex Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan has confirmed the dates of its largest annual military drills. The Kuang exercises will take place in 2 stages. The first will be computer-based exercises simulating various threats, running from April 5th to the 18th. The second will be nationwide live-fire exercises from July 9th to the 18th. This year, the live-fire portion of the exercises will be extended from 5 days to 10 as China increases its aggression in the region. The Kuang exercises have been held for decades, simulating Taiwan's response to a full-scale attack from China. Top officials in the U.S. Trump administration have been left scrambling to deny a report that they discussed military plans in a Signal group chat that included a journalist.
Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
18 cabinet members were in the chat, including Hegseth and Vice President J.D. Vance. Messages contained operational details about strikes the U.S. carried out on Yemen's Houthi group earlier this month. The conversation was reported by Atlantic editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg, who says he was unexpectedly added to the chat. Signal is an open-source encrypted messaging app. It has not been approved by the U.S. government for sharing sensitive information. For more on how the Trump administration accidentally shared sensitive military plans with a journalist, Alec McDonald spoke to Alan Liska, intelligence analyst at Recorded Future.
This story really starts with government officials using a commercial app opposed to a secure government-developed app. What are the risks that these officials are taking when they're using Signal to communicate what is perceptively classified information?
So there are a few things that are concerning with this. One is that we don't know if this was on government-issued devices or personal devices. And obviously, your personal devices are much more susceptible to attacks, and every person who is on that text chain is a target. So even if Signal isn't compromised, their personal devices could be, and everything that's on those devices could be flowing off into into enemy hands. But the other thing is, at least in the U.S., there are records requirements that all military operations have to follow. And Signal is, as secure as Signal is, it doesn't meet the demands of those record requirements. So, that means that conversations are in place that aren't necessarily going to be recorded the way they should. And that information, the information that's being shared, is government property. So just like any other military operation, the information being shared there is government property, and now there's no record of what was being said or why decisions were made.
So have there been incidences of other information that, while still sensitive, is lower level, but it's still leaked on these messaging apps such as WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, apps that would not be considered secure for sensitive information communication?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, even inadvertently, we've seen the stories repeatedly about how you can track secret military bases by people going running with their fitness watches and uploading the information from there, from those watches to the cloud, and then suddenly that's available for everybody to see. So there are all kinds of things that happen. And it shouldn't, but it definitely happens. And, sometimes in a battlefield or in an emergency situation, you don't have any choice to do this.
So in the current cyber warfare environment, we're seeing more advanced attacks. And like you said, each person on this communications chain has a device that could potentially be at risk. What steps do, say, Taiwanese or U.S. officials need to take to ensure that these mistakes don't happen again and that sensitive information stays secure?
So communication should always be done on authorized government devices. And those government devices should be constantly going through audits, looking for malware, looking for intrusions, looking for the types of access that we worry about. So that's the first thing. Again, sometimes that's not going to be the case. There are exceptions where you may have to use your personal device in a field or whatever. And in cases like that, there should be strict guidelines from government offices about how and when that can be used and what level of information can be shared. We never want to disrupt military operations when, or slow them down because of regulations. But we always have to make sure you're being secure. It doesn't do you any good if you feel like you have to use your personal device in the battlefield and you're just sharing everything that you're sending to other people in the field with an enemy combatant. And that could literally be happening in any of these cases.
That was Alan Liska, intelligence analyst at Recorded Future. The Philippines Coast Guard says it spotted several Chinese vessels operating near its exclusive economic zone on Monday. A Philippines reconnaissance flight spotted the Chinese warship and 5 Coast Guard vessels near the Scarborough Shoal on Monday. The Philippines also says China installed a floating barrier near the shoal where a Chinese warship was stationed. Manila has called the move an unlawful attempt to block access to the surrounding waters. The Philippine-controlled shoal is part of the South China Sea, a region claimed by both Beijing and Manila. The incident is the latest in an ongoing territorial spat between the two countries. Japan has launched a permanent military HQ to coordinate its defense forces and respond to emergencies, including a conflict over Taiwan. Japanese defense officials say more than 200 personnel will work for the new Joint Operations Command. Tokyo says it's concerned about what it calls a changing security environment. Many observers say this is a significant reform in the country's self-defense forces. Tens of thousands of protesters have rallied across Turkey for a 6th day over the jailing of Istanbul's mayor. Ekrem İmamoğlu is awaiting trial on corruption charges, which the country's main opposition party says are unfounded. İmamoğlu is President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's main political rival. Protesters say the allegations against him are politically motivated.
Bak Erdoğan, diyordun ki ilk gün olur, ikinci gün durulur, üçüncü gün unutulur. Bir hafta oldu, ne diyor gençler? Bu daha başlangıç, mücadele devam.
President Erdogan has called the protests a movement of violence. The UN is warning that 6.3 million people could die from AIDS over 4 years if U.S. foreign aid isn't restored. The agency leading the global response to HIV says that recent cuts to USAID could result in 2,000 new infections a day. U.S. President Donald Trump's administration has paused hundreds of millions of U.S. dollars in foreign aid for 90 days. The UN also predicts a 10-fold increase in HIV-related deaths due to treatment delays and clinic closures. Taiwan's exports outlook remains strong for its lucrative chips and electronics industry despite looming U.S. tariffs. U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff policy has shaken global markets, but leading Taipei economic think tank TIER says Taiwan should still be able to hit its 3% growth target for the year. Washington is set to unveil reciprocal tariff plans next week, targeting countries that run trade surpluses with the U.S., which includes Taiwan. Trump has also suggested a separate tariff on imported chips.
那现在就是说，因为川普的政策是说，到底是对等关税，还是贸易顺差，还是贸易量大的，这个都没有讲清楚部分。如果真的是就字面上来讲对等关税的话，理论上半导体跟伺服器那个是不能课税的。
TIER says Taiwan's simple tariff rate is a little higher than the U.S.'s, but its weighted tariff of 1.6 is in fact lower than Washington's. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Finally, we leave you with images from the World Surf event featuring exciting footage of the athletes competing. I'm Tiffany Wong. Take care and see you next time.